My name is Becky Zahn, Z like zebra, AHN, and I am an RN. I am a school nurse, and I've been here with the district for the past 11 years. Um, I've done many things before this, so this is the last step in my career, but I've always worked with children, and I love being in the schools because I have contact with the children all the time. I have 4 elementary schools here at TUSD that I supervise, and I have a health assistant in each school who do the day-by-day taking care of the children. And I visit the schools at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. I was
You do rounds.
yeah. I was not part of the SAMS project, except for a short while at one of the schools that I covered for a while. But I was well aware of it, and you know what that is, right? And that's kind of led us on this road down. I did talk to a group for the American Lung Association here in town who was promoting the newest legislature that we got for having inhalers in schools and having stock inhalers in schools and available to all children, which really has been a boon to our schools, all of our schools, whether they be elementary or middle or high schools, because we know that children with asthma sometimes have unexpected exacerbations, unexpected things that cause them to start having an asthma exacerbation. And so to be able to intervene with that, even if we don't have medicine specifically for them, in the school, we can interrupt that immediately and then get them to the care that they need. So it has made a huge difference in my schools and from the other nurses in the district in all the schools to have that available in each school. And also to have the law that allows us to have that here.
And question, so I see that you oversee, so you have health nurses, at least one in each school.
We have health assistants, yes.
Health assistants. How many kids do you think have asthma within all the school districts?
It's estimated that probably about 20 to 30% of the kids in schools have asthma. It's a very high number. It is the leading cause of absences in schools from all over the country. This is not, it's well known. And that's why there are so many programs in place to try to prevent them from having exacerbations. But there is also a huge number of hospitalizations every year with children with asthma that we know now that if we do preventative care and we can teach not only the parent but the child about preventative care, that we can eliminate those hospitalizations or make them the number very, very low. So that's our goal. We have had that the parent has not said to us. We get a health registration history form every year, and we put it out every year to the same kids and the new kids, so that we have some idea. And when I talk to the kindergarten parents coming in, I say it's important for us to know anything that was wrong with your child, because sometimes what happens is they have intermittent asthma, and that is it only acts up at certain times of the year or if they get a cold, that kind of thing. So the parents kind of don't think of it as a real problem because the child gets sick, they keep the child home, particularly if they're young children and they've not had experience in school. They keep them home until they're well and forget it, and not realizing that while he's in school every day, he could possibly start getting sick there, and we need the medicine here. So sometimes it takes us a while to get the parents on board to bring the medicine to us, and so that we can keep it in school. It helps when we're able to tell them that the insurance pays for the second inhaler, because that's a federal law, and then they can ask their doctor to just write a prescription for school use. And I use that a lot to try to get them here. But if they're here, they start to wheeze, we will treat them. Okay, wheezing means we need to treat. All right, particularly audible wheezing. We don't take that chance. And then, as we're doing that, we're investigating whether or not this child has a history of asthma, and maybe he hasn't had an asthma attack for over a year. Okay, and the parents just don't put it down because they think it's gone, but something triggers him off. So to be able to treat that child on the spot immediately and then get him to care is most important. Most important. It really is a preventative kind of thing. And then some of them, they're not here. So if we had a child that we knew had, here's the routine. Children come in, we get the health registrations, we know they have asthma. My health assistants contact those parents that we flag those kids. So they contact the parents as soon as school starts, as soon as we can get to it, and ask them to bring us medication. We don't want the preventative medicine, we don't want the control medicines, we just want the rescue medicine. We want the albuterol, so that if he gets in trouble, we can give him something. If we don't have that, previous to having the stock inhalers and the ability to give them the medicine, even if theirs isn't here, if the child was sick enough, and there are nurses in the district that have had to do this, and I tell the parents this, that if we don't have the medicine, your child gets very ill, and we don't have the medicine to treat him, we would call the parent and say, you need to bring the medicine now. And oftentimes that can't happen because they're at work, they don't have the medicine with them, or maybe they haven't even picked up the medicine from the pharmacy yet. Or B, if the child is in severe distress, we need to call an ambulance and send them straight to the hospital. We didn't wait for it to get worse, because we know once they start wheezing and the airways start closing, there's a whole system of going down and what's going to happen, and it's not going to get better without treatment, it's going to get worse. So we need to get them to a place safe where someone can watch them. My boss would be able to tell you statistically how many times that happened, but I do know that with severe asthmatics, without medication, it has happened throughout the district. Probably, for me, it was, I think in the 11 years, I did it twice. I mean, usually the parents respond, particularly if the child is sick enough, and we can, and I can be there to monitor him and make sure that he's moving air, because that's what you're concerned about. My health assistants, without a registered nurse there, would tend to, if I'm not there that day and I'm at another school, they call me. We try to get to where the emergency is, but in the meantime, if the child is bad enough, we'll tell them to call and have the child transported. I think I don't know of anybody who had to do it last year. At my last nursing meeting when we talked about this, that we didn't have to call ambulance. We didn't have to do that because we could treat the child and call the parent, say, he's in distress, we've treated him, you can take it, and we have standing orders from our doctor, from our TUSD doctor, and we need you to come and take him to get checked at the doctors. So it's made a huge difference. So I worked in the hospital for years. I went back and got my master's degree, and I did a specialty 4 years, and then I went back and got my nurse practitioner degree, and I practiced in a hospital clinic. I practiced in private practice, and I came here to retire, but here I am 11 years later still working at the schools.
Wow.
So I've had many jobs, always with children. Always with children. I don't, the only adults I take care of are my family, unfortunately, and they're much harder than the kids.
Special
Yes,
stories?
we have a couple examples of that. We have actually we have a student here, and this is a very good example because they're two siblings. Their mother had, and they're known asthmatics, and we always have medicine for them every year. However, at the beginning of the school year, their mother had a stroke, and a bad stroke. And so their lives were totally upset and upside down, and she wasn't able to get their prescriptions, to get them their medicine here, and so we have had to use it for them. But we know why, and this was a lifesaver for them that was here. I have, it's mostly kids that have been, many kids that in my other schools that have not had to use their medicine for a while. For instance, a change of season when it got cold. A lot of children, the cold weather is a trigger for them. So when they get up in the morning and that cold, and they go out for school, they get in the car or they get on the bus, and that cold weather hits them in the winter time in the mornings. And it is cold in the morning here. I think people forget that we can get in the 30s and 40s. So that cold air hits them, it sets them off, and by the time they get to school, they are having problems. So to be able to have the inhaler at the school ready, even though we don't have theirs because they've been fine, is a big thing. Then we can call the parent and say, you need to send the inhaler. This is his bad time. And so it's important to know kids' triggers. It's important to know that different children are set off by different things. Running is a big thing. And it is helpful sometimes when we have children who normally are fine out on the playground because it's 15-minute spurts, but after school, even in elementary school, we have sporting things. And right now, we're seeing this because track is here. And so our 4th and 5th graders participate in track in most of my schools. And the ones that have asthma often come to the office before, we try to get them to come before they go running, okay? But we also have the inhaler available to them after they run if they become short of breath. So that is a big help also. In general, in Arizona, it's allergies to the flying things in the air. Now we're getting into spring and everything is blooming, and this is usually a bad time for a lot of kids. So we'll see them start with the allergy. Sometimes it's with their eyes, and we'll say, we can say, have you taken your medicine? They need to start the medicine. So you need to be aware of, sometimes it's just normal kinds of dust in their homes. There are many different of kinds of triggers for asthma, and so it's important. One of the things we ask for when the child has asthma is an action plan from the doctor to tell us when how to give the medicine, when to give the medicine, what to look for in the symptoms. But it's also important that we have another part of that the parent fills out about what are your child's triggers. And with the other thing about the prevention here is that we incorporate the American Lung Association's open airways programs in our schools. And it's been a great, I use it in all my schools for 3rd to 5th graders, and they teach them about the asthma and how to take care of their own asthma. It is their disease, and just as you saw with Chiron, of him knowing how to use that inhaler, that's our job, to teach them to know how. And as they get older, to know why, and to recognize when they're having the symptoms early, and also to use their preventative medicine, their control medicine at home. I remember not very long ago, one of my sister's friends told her that his granddaughter died from an asthma attack last year. And I said, oh no, that can't be. And she said, yes, I couldn't believe it, Becky. And I said, yes, that is abominable. I said, there is no reason. This is a treatable disease. It may not be curable, but this is truly a treatable disease. We've come so far in understanding this disease from the time I started. I was an in-house pediatric nurse that when the kids came in with asthma, we hung up aminophylline IV and gave it to them to try to stop their. We had no idea about the inflammation and the need for steroids back then. We didn't know. We didn't understand the pathophysiology. And a lot was blamed on emotion way back when, and that the child could bring on his asthma attack if he wanted to. It was amazing. I mean, when I think back over my career and how we've progressed, but to understand and to help people understand how this disease works, why it happens, and that there's parts of it, different parts of it that we need to treat. That's why we've come so far, and that's why I say if a child dies, there's just no reason for it. It's probably the saddest thing I ever hear.
So at the beginning of this year, one of my students with asthma didn't have his inhaler at school, and they were getting a new one and trying to figure things out, so it was really helpful to have the stock inhaler because he needs it every day, at least once a day. Every day when we go to recess, he gets it, or for PE. So, he would have had a really hard time if we wouldn't have been provided with one, since he didn't have his. So one of my students with asthma comes every day right before recess. So right when we walk outside, he has his snack, and then he knows to come. I don't even have to tell him anymore. He comes here right away before he goes outside. If he runs without having his inhaler, he sometimes can get really sick. So he has to take it every day, just once a day. And then my other student, only his mom will tell me if he's having a hard time, and if it's extra windy or the weather is changing. But he's maybe only had to come one time. But my other one student comes every single day. My student that comes to have his inhaler every single day sometimes will get really choked up, and he'll be wheezing, and he'll tell me I can't breathe. I tell him go get some water, take a deep breath, and then I usually call Margaret, the health assistant, and she'll come check him out or have him come here. Because sometimes he'll just cough, and sometimes he has to even go home because he's getting so sick. And the other student I haven't really noticed too much. He stayed home a couple of days because of his asthma. But at school he seems to be okay. But my one student I've seen many times, and he'll get so worked up, he'll be crying because it's hard for him to breathe, and it's really hard. Yeah. We've never had to call, not for any of my students, we haven't had to call EMT or any emergency. But my one child has been to the hospital multiple times. He's been in my classroom for 2 years, and at least 3 times since I've known him, he's been in the hospital from getting so sick. This year, one time, he's been to the hospital. Last year, I think at least 2 times, and this year, at least 1, maybe more. So last year when we didn't have the stock inhaler, it would, I would get very worried if this child was, crying so hard because he was having a hard time breathing, and if he wouldn't have his inhaler at school, we had to call the parents. What if they don't answer their phone? What if they're not available? And then I just feel very sorry for the child. But, having it available this year just takes some stress away, because I know it's fine. Even if his isn't here, there's something here to help him. And, you know, now we have his too, which is nice, but it's always nice to have a backup because if he can't breathe, what do you do? So it takes a lot of stress away, not having to worry. I just love kids. I've always loved kids. I was a babysitter since I was able to, and yeah, I just love them, and they're so sweet and kind and just innocent. They just want to be the best person, and I love it. And they're amazing and hilarious, and it's a relief to be around children. With so much going on in the world, to have these bright, happy faces,
Yeah.
making your day better.
It's like
I mean, I have a funny, the first time that we laughed, because he was difficult when I first met him and wasn't really wanting to joke around, and I picked him up from art, and he's washing his hands, and I said, "Oh, look, you got all the paint off your hands, great, it's ready to go." And he's like, "No, I didn't, I have some right there." And I just started cracking up, and he looks at me, "Am I funny?" I said, "Yes, you're so funny." And he thought he was kind of pushing my buttons by saying, "No, I didn't." And oh my goodness, I just thought it was hilarious, and we both laughed, and that was the first time that we bonded, and I'll never forget it.